Just give me a second. Let's take some water.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good. Whoa. Thank you. Whoa.
Man.
Okay. Wait, so this is already done?
This is recording, so is that. I just have to press this one.
Okay, so ready. What?
Move the cup and the water bottle. Right.
You good?
Yep.
Okay.
I got everything else in there. I'm sorry. Let me just. That's it. Everything all right there?
Yeah. It's alright.
It didn't sound all right.
Oh yeah.
It's okay. Wow.
Discard. Second. This may add thing. 1 second. Okay, here we go. Okay.
Okay. So we're holding what's called the Shloshim Kabbalah, the 3 days right before Shavuos. We do have 49 days to take care of this, but obviously as it gets closer, our avodah is a little more. You see over the Kotzker would say, you see people davening Rosh Hashanah with so much kavanah simply because they know it's at stake. He said, no, Rosh Hashanah, a bilkul arayf, a bilkul arup. One more roll, one less roll. What's the big deal? But Shavuos the Rosh Hashanah for the Torah you're going to learn that year. That's really what counts, and the person really should be davening then. So, of course, there are many things that we are meant to accomplish during this period as we get ready for Kabbalah Torah. The truth is, we came out of Mitzrayim, very, very rough-edged. We were slaves. We had to have our own interests in mind, so to speak, and we're getting ready to receive the Torah with Ba'achta, so it's a big transformation that we have to do. And they see over the story of a fellow who was a suit salesman, and he was a very successful suit salesman. And then one time he left, he quit, and he joined the police academy. He joined the police academy. So after a while, when he graduated, his father said, and he started to work, his father said, "No, is the pay better?" No. He says, "Are the hours better?" He goes, "No." "Do you have more friends then?" He goes, "No." "So you're a successful suit salesman. Why did you leave to become a policeman?" He says, "When I was a suit salesman," he goes, "the customer is always right. I became a policeman. The customer is always wrong. It's much easier to do." So he said, the truth is, that's how he left, when he left Mitzrayim. The customer is always wrong, but the job is to reach a point where the customer is always right, and to look at every other yid that way, and how we can help each other. And of course, there are many time of the Torah, there are many aspects of the Torah. So I just want to point out one nakuda of something we can keep in mind. If I were to ask you, when do we say Hallel Hagadol? So let me give you a few options. Hallel Hagadol, either we say it on Rosh Chodesh,
We don't say no Chodesh.
or on Yom Tif.
Chodesh?
I'm giving you options. It's America. We give America.
Remember the question. Hallel Hagadol.
Hallel Hagadol.
Not Hallel half.
Rosh Chodesh. Oh, very good.
More time.
On Yom Tif, every Shabbos or every day? So what's the answer?
No.
Every day.
What's
Every day.
Hallel means a full hell, no?
No.
That's why I asked the question. Otherwise, I wouldn't ask. Right?
Hallel Gadol is not
Hallel Hagadol. So when do we say Hallel Hagadol?
Right?
Very good.
Tell them
Okay.
something, yeah.
Yes. What is Hallel Hagadol? Hallel Hagadol is Perik Kuf Lamed Zayin, Kuf Lamed Vav, and it's a part of them where it says Hoidul Hashem Ki Tov, Ki Leilam Chazdai. That's called Hallel Hagadol. The Hallel that we say on Yom Tif, on Rosh Hashanah, on Rosh Chodesh, Hallel Shalom, Chatzi Hallel, that's called Hallel HaMitzri. HaMitzri, the Egyptian Hallel. The Egyptian Hallel. That's what we say, praising Hashem when we are leaving Mitzrayim. I'm sorry? Regular Hallel, there's no such thing as regular Hallel. Everything has a surname or Hallel is Kuf Lamed Vav, Hayid L'Hashem Kitayv Kilayim Chazdei. Yeah. So the Gemara says like this. The Gemara Pesachim says on Kuf Ches, Tana Rabbana, Revi Goymer Lovis Halal. By the fourth kais, we finish Halal, and V'Omer Halal Gadol. We also say Halal Gadol. So we finish Halal, right? We said the first half before, then the second half now. Plus we say we finish Halal.
Basically, the whole Pesukah is Zimra.
Well, it's a long, big chunk. So ask the Gemara, Me'echen Halal Gadol. Where does it start? So the Gemara goes through different Akudais, but we hold like it goes from Haylo Shem Kitayv Kilayim Chazdei. Ask the Gemara, the Lama Nikr Shmei Halal Gadol. Why is it called Halal Gadol? Omer Rav Yochanan, Pnei Shakadosh Baruch Hu Yoshev B'Rami Shel Olam. Kadosh Baruch Hu sits on the height of the world, U'Mechalik Mizaynaisa V'Chol Bria, and He gives everyone food, everyone parnasa, and it's a very big thing. That's Halal Gadol. Omer Shul ben Levi, it's just an amazing thing. The first thing, by the way, that came to mind when it says Hani Esther V'Shisha Haidu Keneged Mi. There are 26 times we say Haidu L'Shem Kitayv. We say Kilayim Chazdei. 20. So the first thing came to mind with Kilayim Chazdei would be the Shem Havaya, Hashem's name. Yud Kei Vav Kei. But the Gemara doesn't say that. He asked the question, Keneged Mi, what's it for? Keneged Esther V'Shisha Dairis Shabar Kodesh Baruch Hu B'Elamai. V'Loi Nasil Lehem Taira V'Zon Aisam B'Chazdei. These are the 26 dairis from when Hashem created the world until Kabbalah the Torah. What are those 26 generations? So you have from the Mishnah of it says mi Adam ad Noach asar dairis. Then you have from Noach to Adam to Avram, and then from Avram you have Yitzchak, Yaakov, Levi, Kahas, Amram, and Moshe. So 26 dairis. He does, but he counts other side. He can't count them twice.
No, but they were learning Torah, no?
No, they didn't receive. They didn't have receive the Torah. That was by Kabbalah Torah. We received the Torah. They kept the Torah. Learning, I don't know what that means. Learning, but she says even though they didn't have the Torah, so how did they eat? How did they eat? So it says they ate. Because Baruch Hu is a Chesed, and that's how they ate. So it's interesting to ask a kash on this. Before we ask the kash, just to present something else. It's a famous thing that Chaim Volozhin says. Why did the Kadosh Baruch Hu make different time zones? It's well known, right? So if I would ask you, how many time zones are there?
24.
So normally you say 24, right? Pretty interesting. It's actually because the world is divided into 360, longitude. Because of that, and it turns 15 degrees every hour. It turns out there are 40 time zones. There are some places that go by 45. I think there's a place in New Zealand that does that. There's a place it goes by we have like Chicago, let's say, is an hour behind, right? It goes by the hour. There's a place in New Zealand that goes by 45.
45 minutes.
Yeah, and then they have a place in India that goes by half hour.
What you mean?
No,
What you said?
like the time zone in this city, like everywhere you think it goes by an hour, right? So this place is 10 o'clock. So Chicago, it would be let's say 9 o'clock. But you know of any place that's 10 o'clock here and 10:45 somewhere else?
No.
No, right? So what?
By hour.
By the hour. So I'm saying. So then that would give you 24 time zones.
Right.
But really, if you look it up, there are 40 time zones. The places go by half hour, places that go by 50 minutes. So Chaim Volozhin said over from the Gain. Why is that? So there should be every moment there should be someone learning Torah, because the world cannot exist without learning Torah. In fact, we have just had in last week's parsha, the pasuk says starts off in B'chukosei Telechu, and the pasuk says if you go in my ways, and then the next pasuk it continues on the pasuk. I'm the first one here. That's mitzvah tishmeru. I see somebody you should do them. So Rashi asked right away, what does it mean in B'chukosei Telechu? If you go in my chukim, go in my ways. The next words say, and you'll do my mitzvahs. So that can be the first part. So Rashi says that's referring to learning Torah, being an amal and learning. So they all ask the question: if you mean what you say what you mean. Rashi had no problem saying, what does it mean? The pasuk should have started im amelim v'Torah, Why play around? And Orach Chaim says, you know why the Torah calls it a chayk? Because you may think, of course I have to learn. It makes sense I have to learn. I have to know what to do. Says Orach Chaim, no. Of course you have to know what to do. But there's also an Indian to learn Torah just for the sake of learning Torah. In fact, says Orach Chaim, that's why Hashem put forgetfulness in the world by learning. So you should be compelled to keep on learning. So it's a chayk that you have to keep on learning.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So if the whole world revolves around the fact that the Torah being learned, then before Kabbalah Torah, how does the world survive?
You want to give away my whole share, or what do you want to do? Continue eating your chont. So, very good. So that's exactly what I'm leading up to. So that being the case, it says over here that every second you have to learn. So, and if you do that, by the way, life's going to be great. Every single bracha you can think of, you won't even. It says you won't see war. You won't even see a sword. Today we know what that means. We won't even see a missile going that we have to run away, and then it's going to get shot down. Baruch Hashem. Even that, nothing. We won't experience anything if we're learning Torah. Then the plus is an amazing thing. And if you do that, ufanisi alechem, I will turn to you. V'freisi eschem, and I will multiply you. V'beisi eschem, and I will increase you. Akimaisi is brisi. I will establish my treaty with you. Itchem. Says Rashi, what does it mean? I will turn to you. So Rashi says, Efna mikol sakai. I'm going to turn away from all my other things I'm busy with. L'shalem scharchem, to pay your reward. What does it mean? I will turn away from everything else. I have to turn away from something else to. So Rashi says, Mashal l'mad avadaima. It's a mashal to a king who had workers. And from Teres Kahanim, he doesn't say the rest, but the Siddur Chacham says, what's the story? He had a bunch of workers, and came payday, and they all came to get paid. But he had one worker who really did a great job. So this worker, he said, you know what, you wait on the side, I'll take care of you later. Let me just pay everyone quickly. And then this worker, he came and he paid him properly, and he had a nice suda with him. And that's what Hashem says over here. You do so well, I'm going to turn from everything else, and I'm going to... What does that mean? Like Hashem's... Imagine a busy executive, people are coming inside, phones ringing, the shipment's late, the tariff went up on that thing got taken. Everybody stop, I can't deal with all this. Let me just speak to one person at a time. Is that how we picture Kadosh Baruch Hu? It says, Ufanisia, I'm going to turn from everyone. After Mikol Sakai, I'm going to turn away from everything that I'm busy with to pay you your reward. How does that mean? What does that mean? So they say over that when the Gain, the Gain was a lot by himself, but in his younger years in the city of Vilna, he gave a shir in the Shul. And one time he was giving a shir, there were Bachrim there, and as the Bachrim were filing in, one Bachrim came in, and the Vilna Gain stood up for him. So the Bachrim got a little nervous. He stood up, so everyone stood up. He got more nervous. He ran to his seat, he sits down, the Vilna Gain sat down. Shir, everyone's looking at him like he's looking back at them, and fine, Shir's over, and everyone's coming around like, what's going on? What'd you do? I don't know. In fact, he was so curious, he himself went to ask the guy, like, what's... So the guy says, what do you mean? Of course I have to stand up for you. So he says, tell me, Bachro, where were you last night? Not exactly a question you want to get from your Rebbe. He says, last night I was at home. And what were you doing? I went to sleep. He says, the whole night? Well, it just so happens to be that around sometime middle of the night, I couldn't sleep. I got up, I was twisting and turning, I couldn't fall back asleep. So I went, I did the for sure thing that always works. I took a warm cup of milk, I took a Gemara, I drank the warm cup of milk, I learned the Gemara for a few minutes, it did its job, and I fell asleep. So the Vilna Gaon says, you should know, during of those minutes that you were learning Gemara, there was a moment where you were the only one in the world who was learning Torah. Wow. And during that moment, the world was sustained because of you. So how can I not stand up? The world was sustained because of you. How can I not stand up for you? So Baruch Hashem, the Bach was off the hook. He was in bed talking. So that worked out. But that's what it is. So he says, that's the pshat in the pasuk over here. Hashem says that you can have 100,000 people learning Torah. That doesn't take away from the fact that each of those 100,000 people, if they were the only ones learning, the world would be sustained in their schos. And therefore the pasuk says, I'm going to turn away from everything else that I'm doing to focus on you, as if Your learning is so important. It's as if you're the only one learning and you are sustaining the world. So to the Vilna Gaon, you can do it to the person who's really doing it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks at each person for that moment that you're learning Torah, you are sustaining the world. That is the cheshivas of learning, and therefore the world has to have learning at all time. So that's the case. Bring back to this kasha. Ask the Gemara. So if that's the case, the first 26 years, how did the world exist? If it didn't have the first 26 generations, how did the world exist? Says the Gemara. The Gemara asks the kasha. The Gemara says it existed by Hashem's chesed. The chesed of Hashem, that's how it existed. Only the chesed of Hashem. Otherwise it wouldn't have existed. But once the Torah was given, then it has to exist on the Torah. Which is a little not so satisfying because that means that there was a downgrade when the Torah was given. Hashem was doing chesed with us, and the world would exist. What would happen now if there was a moment no one was learning Torah? The world would cease to exist. So that's like a downgrade. Like what happened to Hashem's chesed?
What's both ways?
Why?
Because now
It's also an upgrade.
your schus is amazing.
It is.
If
But what happens if there's a hole in the way?
I guess Hashem knows there's no holes in the way.
That's the same with the Morava. Their
What?
judgment was that why go to Eretz Yisrael? We have Hashem here learning with us, teaching us.
Right.
We're not doing anything wrong.
And you're right, and they messed up. Right. And we're still suffering because of that.
It wasn't like
So Rav Hutner says a very interesting thing. Rav Hutner writes as follows. If you look at the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim, we say the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim, Hashem Hashem Kelma. In the Midas Harachamim, one of them is Chesed ve'emes. So Chesed is beautiful. Hashem does kindness for us, and no explanation needed of why Chesed is inside the Midas Harachamim. What about Emes? Emes is straightforward. It's emes. You do this, these are the consequences. You did that, these are the consequences. So how is it possible? Why do we put the word emes inside the 13 characteristics of mercy? Chesed, I understand. Emes doesn't fit. Emes is very straightforward, and emes could be painful. So what's a pshat that's included? And he explains as follows. Very interesting. It's well known. The Rambam in Matas Aniyim in Perek Yud Halacha Zayin. The Rambam writes. It's well known. He talks about the chiyuv of tzedakah. He writes chayavan anu lizar b'mitzvah tzedakah yesh mikol mitzvah say. A person has to be careful with tzedakah more than every other mitzvah say. Why? Shetzedakah simin l'tzadik zera Avram Avinu. If someone gives tzedakah, you are from the children of Avram Avinu. That's how important it is to give tzedakah. And he goes on, all the different psukim, tzivim, mishpat tifta, etc. Then he writes, as well known also, that the shmeina ma'alos yesh tzedakah. There are 8 levels of tzedakah. What's the highest level of tzedakah? Helping someone be self-sufficient. Helping the guy get a job, giving him enough money, not just to sustain him, but helping him start a business, or as the saying goes in English, give a man a fish, fed him for a day, teach a man to fish, you fed him for life. That would be the highest level of tzedakah. Now, why is that the highest level of tzedakah? The Rambam brings other levels of tzedakah where, brings a rise from the different places, that me giving tzedakah to someone I don't know who's getting it, who's receiving it, and the person who's receiving it doesn't know who he's getting it from, this way no one's embarrassed. Why wouldn't that be a higher level? It's beautiful to sustain somebody, but there's going to be some embarrassment there, or some uncomfortable something. And explains, this farm explain, very simple. Helping somebody be self-sustaining is the best thing. It's a Gemara. The Gemara says, Bab Metzia. In Bab Metzia, Adam writes a kav shalai, b'tisha kav sh'chaverim. A person would rather have one kav of his own, one measurement of his own, than 9 measurements of someone else. Why is that? They call it the IKEA effect. Why is IKEA so successful? Even though people get so frustrated trying to get it, trying to go. When it's done, it's not so, it's curvy a little, whatever it is. We can blame the instructions, whatever. but because we went to step 7 before step 3, when he said don't tighten it, and we, whatever. But at the end of the day, I did it. I'm excited.
You gotta do the whole thing
You know,
over.
right? I did it. So Rav Pam explained Xvalas.
IKEA furniture, yeah, that's why.
IKEA effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a reason why they're even open Israel. Can you imagine? They have patience to read the instructions. Anyways, so Rav Pam explained Rav Hutner saying as follows. He said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to give tzedakah in the highest level possible. Until the Torah was given, we received the Torah as chesed. Once the Torah was given, we can now receive the Torah as emes. In other words, that we can work for it. How does that work? Hashem gives opportunity to do a mitzvah. For example, Hashem wants to give you something, but you don't deserve it. So while you're walking down the street, the guy in front of you drops his wallet. Oh, you pick it up, you give it to the person. Hashem, Mamash, you lucked out. Hashem gave you that mitzvah right now. Now you did the mitzvah, and now the chesed that Hashem's doing for you is not, it's an emes. I deserve it. Right? Your mother calls you up, I don't have any milk. I need milk. Oh man. Or, great. Something good coming down the pike. You get into your car, you go to the store, you buy your milk, you drive to her house, you give her the milk. HaKadosh Baruch Hu just did a chesed with you. And with that chesed, you're now going to get emes. You're going to get something that you deserved. So that's sort of why the word emes belongs in Yud Gimel Midas. Because it gives you the opportunity to earn something that you want to earn something that you want. So that's a pshat. Until Matan Torah, the world lived on chesed. We didn't deserve it. The world didn't deserve it. Which is why we see they didn't appreciate it. They're doing all these things. However, once Kabbalah the Torah came, we were able to go and to receive the Torah, and now we can work for what we earn. And he explains as follows, a tremendous thing. Look what we say in davening. Say, Melech Oyhev, Tzedakah u'Mishpat. The order doesn't work. The Melech, the king who loves charity and justice. It should be the other way around. According to it should be the king who loves justice and charity. Why? Because what would David Melech, the pasuk says by David Melech in Shmuel Beis, Vahi David Oisem Mishpat Tzedakah. David would do Mishpat and Tzedakah. And yet in Shemon Esrei it says the other way around. And the answer is, what would David Melech do? He would judge a case the way a case has to be judged. You're not allowed to look at the litigants. You're not allowed to look at, well, this guy's rich, this guy's rich. No, you have to judge the case. But once the case was over, and this guy's chayav to pay $100, but David Melech realized this guy doesn't have any money. So first he does mishpat. The psak is you have to pay. He doesn't have any money, so he sticks his hand in his pocket, and he gives him $100. Here, now you have the money to pay. So by a person it says, V'David Oisem Mishpat U'Tzedakah. First he does the judgment, and then he does tzedakah, he'll give the money. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't have to do it that way. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he runs the world. He can do tzedakah and then mishpat. How does he do tzedakah mishpat? HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees that he wants to give you something, so first he gives you the opportunity to earn it. And therefore, he first does the tzedakah, but when it comes time to earn it, you already earned it. And that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu does that. That's what he's saying. Shemeshe Melech Oyev Tzedakah Mishpat. That being the case, when the Gemara says Adam writes a kav shaloi mitisha kav mishal chaveri, you know what that means? That means someone comes over and says, "Do me a favor. I need someone to paint my house. I'll pay you. Pay $100 to paint my house. I'll pay $10 to paint my house." No. It's too little. Okay, fine. By the way, you want $90? No, I don't want to pay $90. No, $90 just for nothing. Sure. Who's going to say no? I don't want the $90, and then say yes. I'll paint your house for the $10, which is what the Gemara says. Adam writes a kav shaloi, mitisha kav shachavera. But I don't think we really process it that way. And the Swarm explained, because we don't really appreciate. We think of the tisha kavim, but do we think of the kav shaloi? In other words, if we would put in the effort, we're wired differently nowadays, but if we would put in the effort, we would appreciate it much more. You know the story, I had this story by me, when a few years ago, my son was growing tomatoes. And he would every day take care of it. Tomatoes started to grow. He was upset they were green, patience, they actually turned red, and they started to get big and succulent, they were great. And one day he comes running in, he's got a real A real live tomato. Great. He puts it on the porch. He runs inside to get a plate and a knife. And he comes out, and there's his friend came to go ask him wants to play baseball. And he sees a nice, succulent tomato. And he lifts it up. And at that moment is when my kids come running out. The tomato's in the air, and you can imagine in slow motion, like, no, right? And whack, and he smashes, and it was a really good, juicy tomato. And that was that. And he started yelling and screaming, okay, I'll pay you. What was it, 10 cents, 20 cents? He said, no, it's my tomato. It was my tomato. He worked for it. He worked for it. Believe me. You can cut a tomato, throw that half out, no problem. No, not this tomato. This, I work for it. That's the kav shaloi. Once it's yours, then you appreciate it. And that is what we need to do. She says, that's the pshat. The 26 dairies, we say, halal hagadol. Kilayim chazi, kilayim chazi. Yes, all beautiful. But we have to realize that what we need to do is, we got the Torah differently. Once Kabbalas Torah came, Hashem gave us the Torah, that it could be ours, it could be shaloi. And if that's why sometimes a person is learning something and it's hard to understand. So wow, you're lucky. Because now you have to work on it, and you put it together, that IKEA effect, you put it together, and this becomes yours. Believe me, if you worked 2-3 hours on a taisus and you get it, you're going to go and tell that taisus to everybody. Until they tell you, stop already. Right? Why? Because it's my taisus. What? Yeah, it's mine, right? You got to do it. It's mine. You got to, if you work for something, it's yours. In fact, you mentioned that. To tell you quickly, it's a famous thing. We stay up the night of Shavuos. Why we stay up? So some people say to reenact what they did. They were sleeping by Kabbalas Torah, so we do the same thing. We stay up at night, then we fall asleep by laning. But that's not really what's supposed to happen. But what's Takat of Shat? They felt. Why were they sleeping? Why were they sleeping? They fell asleep. They were so excited. They fell asleep. The Swarm right is because the Torah is so great. They thought they're going to get the Torah b'nevuah. They're going to go to sleep. They get a b'nevuah.
They had no idea they were going to be up.
They thought they have to go to sleep. Moshe comes running. No. You don't get the Torah as a gift. You got to work for it. You got to show up. You got to show up, be up, and work for it. That's what it means to go by Kabbalas Torah. And sometimes we have what to work for, and we give up. Why are you giving up? Hashem's giving you the opportunity to enjoy it so much more. It's done with this.
This question about in 3 years. That's what Mr. Strong says, Hashem says, right? That on the other hand, you see all the Psalms say, anytime you do anything good, whatever, you give Hashem the credit. You think it was you, it wasn't you, it was Hashem. And it takes away the whole
But I never learned like that, so I don't know. I don't have the problem.
What?
I never learned like that. So I don't give Hashem the credit if I did a mitzvah. I get the credit if I did it.
Somebody's farm like that?
I don't learn this farm. I don't learn this farm. I work, of course, in Siyat Shmaya, and everything has to work. But at the end of the day, why is Hashem rewarding me for something He did?
That's what bothers me.
Yeah. Again, there's a lot more. The famous thing with the Chavetz Chaim. There's a lot of terror on this, but I promise. I've heard people say that. I don't subscribe to that. That's all. I just want to end with this. I guess afterwards I can tell you the Chavetz Chaim writes about it. He also says not like that, but nice with the factory in Russia. Okay, whatever. Let's just finish this. Just what does it mean to work hard for something? Very often, when it's time to work hard for something, we don't appreciate it. But if we stick to it, we get something. So nice happened a few years ago. There was a girl. Her name was Rivka. And she came from a very poor family, but she wanted to get married, and it was getting difficult. She was 19, she was 20, she was 21. Okay, not an old maid at 21, 22. Unfortunately, she was 22. Her father passed away. It did not make things any easier. 23, 24. Finally, at 24, Baruch Hashem, she got engaged to a wonderful boy. The boy was in a very similar situation, which means no money. He had parents, but not a penny, and they didn't even make up anything because there's nothing to make up. They're just going to do whatever. Anyways, they made the chassid for 5 months later. A month passed and nothing happened. Another month passed and nothing happened. So she sits down with her mother, Rivka, and says, I don't know what's going to be. We have nothing. So they looked back and forth. They said, you know what? They found a gemach. This gemach takes care of, not like a gemach today where you can rent a gown for only $1,000 or $2,000 and an $11,000 gown. This was a real gemach, no charge. You just have to give it to the cleaners before you give it back. And she had to travel a little up north she lived in Yerushalayim, a little up north to get this dress. And once you're there, they have a way to hook you up with some other stores to get like kitchenwares and things like that. She's very excited. She made an appointment. She gets into a tender like one of these 15-passenger vans, because they go around Yerushalayim picking them up. She gets inside. She's the third person in the van. She sits down on one of the seats. After a few minutes, she realized the driver was playing really not appropriate music. And it was loud. So she says, would you mind just playing something different? She looks around her and says, you paid for your seat, not for your opinion. I don't want to hear you. Okay? A few more people get on. Now it's full. And he gets onto the highway. And he starts to drive. He cranks up the music a little more. He says, please, it's not appropriate music. I can't hear these words. Please. So he turns around and he says, I told you to be quiet. You're not the only passenger here. This is what we're playing. Fine. A little later, again, she turns to the driver, and the driver says, you don't like it, you can get off. She says, you know what, fine, I'll get off. So the driver looks at her and says, I'm not giving you your money back. No, I'm going to get off. While they're having this argument, there was a lady sitting in the front passenger seat, and she had headphones on. And she takes out the headphones, what's going on? And then she starts to hear the music, and she hears this girl saying the music. She turns to the driver, like, come on, you can leave too, I don't want to hear it, I don't care. So she had headphones, she puts it back on. This Kala was very uncomfortable. She says, fine, let me off. Fine. Pulls over to the side, middle of the highway. She gets off. He closed the door. All the passengers couldn't believe it, but he's off. 2 days later, this lady who's sitting in the front is walking the street to Yerushalayim, and she sees this Kala, Rivka. She says, what happened? Are you okay? What happened on the side of the highway? So nervous for you. She says, amazing. I got on the side of the highway, and I don't know if I did the right thing or not. I had an appointment. I'm going to miss my appointment. I waited so long to get this appointment. I need this dress. I don't know if it was right to get off. Maybe I should have just blocked my ears. Dangerous. I said, Hashem, I think I did the right thing. Please help me. And a few minutes later, a car pulls up, asks if I want to ride. I'm scared to go. I look inside. There was a young man driving, and a young lady sitting in the back, and the passenger, she was an older lady. So I went inside. Where are they going? They're going towards where I'm going. Very nice, they'll give me a ride. Starts asking my name, tell her my name, and I tell her what I'm doing. I'm a Kala, I'm going to get a tegamat, to get a dress. And the lady in front says, very nice. She goes, I want you to know something. My father, when he grew up, was from the poorest families in Yerushalayim. Like really, really poor. They can go 2 days without food. Nothing, mamish nothing. And it was just getting more and more difficult, and he was ready to give up. A friend of his was going to the Rav Meir Baal Nes in Tveria. She said, why don't you come along? So, I had nothing to lose. I went along, and she says, my father went along, and he davened. He davened for hours. And when he got there, he felt, after his davening for a few hours, he felt much lighter. The tefillahs worked. He came back, and sure enough, he got a job, started to do some business, and within 2 years, he started to make a lot of money. And we became a very wealthy family. We moved into a nice house. We had nice clothing. But my father never forgot where we came from. And he always made sure there was nobody didn't have food. We always had food available, giving food money. And then my father got old and he died. In his Savah, he didn't leave anything in Savah. He gave us all the money, of course, but he had two stipulations in the Tzavah. Number one, on the yard site of Meir Baal Nes, you go to the caver. And you daven there for a few hours. That's what my success is from. Number two, on my yard site, on the father's yard site, you find a Kala who is very needy, and you supply her with everything that she needs, including her needs for the first year. And we did this every year. Since my father's away now for over 35 years. And the past 7-8 years, it started to get difficult. No problem getting to the Meir Baal Nes. I'm getting old, but I still go. My children, my son and his wife drive me. But I have to tell you, I asked the Scheiner last year, it's hard to find today, Baruch Hashem, you don't have people who are so destitute. People need money, but not so. Maybe I should just give money to organization. I asked the Rabbi, he says, no, this is what your father said. And last year, I davened and I found someone. And this year, Father's Yahrzeit is coming up. I'm davening. And And look at this, Hashem sends you to me. He says, Rivka, you don't have to go to any gemach. You don't have to go buy anything. We're going to go together. I'm going to go buy you everything that you need. You're going to have your rent paid for a year. Don't worry, you're taken care of. He says, that's what it is. Hashem went, I did what I had to do. I stretched myself. Did I have to get off the van? No. Was I crazy for getting off the van? I thought maybe I was. But I think I was doing the right thing for Hashem. I did the right thing for Hashem. Hashem gave me the opportunity to do tzedakah, to do chesed, and Hashem did chesed with me, and therefore I was able to get things emes, which means everything that you could imagine if she just would have been a phone call. Hi, you're a pork collar, right? We've got everything for you. She would have taken it, but how would she feel that whole year? Snoring. And now, she said, I earned it. Look what I did to get all this. So that's what the Kadosh Baruch Hu did. Gave you the opportunity, you grabbed it, and look what you get.
Not just that, she also helped the person who needed to get tzedakah.
Yeah, of course. I'm saying she feels you do something, and you feel you're not a taker. You're not a taker, and that's what we learn from this thing. So Kabbalah Torah is coming. We can be zeichet to receive the Torah, not just as a chesed, but as emes. We work for it, and then we'll get it, and it'll be kavshul, it'll be ours.
Another thing why you said why MS is in the MS, the word is Aleph Mem Taf. The Aleph, before you learn Torah, you have to learn Aleph first. The first letter you learn, Aleph. If you take the original part, the first part of learning Torah, you take which represents Aleph represents Torah. If you take the Aleph away from MS, what are you left with?
Nice.
You gotta have Torah with you. Gotta have Torah with your.
Very nice. Beautiful. Very nice.
Okay.
Good.
Those are going.